Okay, good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see you here today in this beautiful room. Thank you so much to Chatham for hosting. I want to especially thank Chatham University's Office of International Affairs and Kate Emery, and the Center for Women's Entrepreneurship's Women's Business Center, and Anne is in the audience, she's waving back there. They have some materials on the front if you didn't have a chance to get to see them earlier today. So feel free to check it out at the end of the evening. My name's Amy Boots. I'm the Executive Director of the Japan-America Society of Pennsylvania, and we're very excited to partner with the World Affairs Council for this program as well. Right now, I would like to first tell you a little bit about the World Affairs Council, which convenes and connects people around global issues to build a thriving, competitive, and inclusive Pittsburgh. And the Japan-America Society is our region's bridge to Japan through programming that supports the US-Japan friendship at the grassroots level. I'd like to introduce Emma Chandler-Avery, who's the Vice Chair of the National Association of Japan-America Societies, to talk a little bit about the program series.
Thank you, Amy. Again, I'm Emma. I'm here as the Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees for NAJAS, as we call it. NAJAS is a sort of an umbrella organization. There are 38 different Japan-America societies in North America, the oldest in Boston and founded in 1904, the most recent in Iowa in 2015, I think. They're all private, locally funded, independent nonprofits, and throughout all of North America, but mostly here in the United States. The shared mission is to generate mutual understanding between the people of Japan and the people of the United States. This is very much the grassroots level of the US-Japan relationship. The Japan-America Society of Pennsylvania applied for one of the grants that NAJAS provides. It's part of our effort to sort of network the societies by developing these programs and sponsoring these programs. It's funded with the generous support of the Embassy of Japan and competitively granted. Many more societies apply than actually receive these. This is part of the Japan Currents program series. There are 10 of them throughout the United States in the first 3 months of 2023. Other program series cover geostrategy and public affairs and business. This is an exciting opportunity for me to come visit Pittsburgh, see an all-female panel. It's very exciting. It's somewhat unusual to see this. So I'm going to turn it back over to Amy and the panel and look forward to the program. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Emma. First of all, we'd like to acknowledge that we're located in Pittsburgh on the unceded ancestral lands of indigenous peoples, including Seneca, Lenape, Osage, and Shawnee. Throughout this acknowledgement, we invite you to join us in paying respect to our elders, both past and present. Now we'll kick it over to our moderator and CEO and President of the World Affairs Council, Betty Cruz.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Emma, for your partnership, Kate and Anne as well. It's my great honor and privilege to be a part of this all-women panel on Women's History Month, talking about women entrepreneurship and innovation from Japan to Pittsburgh. So really excited to jump in. Our full speaker bios were shared with our audience ahead of time, so I'm not going to read them all to you. They have impressive bios. Please find that on our website. I am going to turn it over so that we can jump right in to hear from our speakers and have them share more about their background, their journey, and then we're going to go through some questions that I have for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to turn it over to you all. So please start thinking about what questions you have. But just to go down the line to ground this on who we're with, I have to my left Asako Uchiyama, who is the Chief Development Officer and General Manager of Business Development at Celaid. Jessy LeClair will be joining us. That's why there's an empty seat. So she'll be popping in here in a moment. But next to Asako is Shimizu, who is an assistant professor in the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Pittsburgh. And Annia Aleman is the Innovation Director at Ascender in Pittsburgh. So with that, thank you all for being here today, and let's jump right in. Asako, if you could please get us started and just, again, take a few moments, walk us through the work you're doing today, any specific trends that you're seeing as it relates to innovation, women's entrepreneurship, your own journey as an entrepreneur. Take it away, and then we'll just go down the line.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Asako Uchiyama. I'm a Chief Development Officer at Celaid Therapeutics in Tokyo. Well, really, I really want to thank you guys for inviting me here. It's really an honor. So my company, Celaid Therapeutics, it's a University of Tokyo spin-out startup. And then it was founded October 2020. But in reality, the budget came in June 2021. So it's really a young company. I'm one of the starting member, but I've been with this company less than 2 years. So it's really barely starting up. And then my role there is a Chief Development Officer. So I was hired because of my background in the science. But small company like this, we have to do everything. And especially with my international background and my language skill, I do, business development, BD as well. So I do all the negotiation with the American counterparts as well in the States. So my background is that, I got a PhD and my bachelor's from University of Arizona. And I was working at the Cornell University for 7 years as a researcher. Then mostly with a family reason, I decided to go back to Japan, and then I switched my career in the industry. So, so the current trend in Japanese entrepreneurship is that, in an old company, my former company in Japan, that was a really large corporate company. And then there, I really see female leading, leaders role in there. And then it was very structured. And then even if I want to say something, there is a ladder that I have to talk to, right? So my, voice doesn't really get to the top. So it was really difficult. But, in this startup field, you can say whatever you want to say. And then there are lot more women, I think, compared to the, big corporate companies in the, management role. And I think I see the, common characteristics in those women who are in entrepreneurship. Like they are kind of like me, who has international experience and have a high language skill, which is great. But then on the other hand, it actually saying that in order to get to the same position as male counterparts, you have to have extra skills. Otherwise, it's really hard to get to the same position. So I think that's a current trend.
Thank you, thank you. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm Shimizu, and I'm an assistant professor in the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs over at Pitt, so very much local. I live across the street, so it's really nice to kind of be here and be with you all, and also be on the stage with some really impressive women, so I'm very glad to be here. I teach public policy at Pitt, and in particular on the domestic political economy of Asian countries, including Japan, but also on China, South Korea, and other neighboring countries. I'm particularly interested in institutions, and so the kind of, especially governance institutions like ministries or agencies that help or sometimes hinder entrepreneurs, innovative work, women in the workplace in particular. And I just wanted to highlight just a couple of things that Japan is doing right now that you may or may not be aware of. Just a couple of days ago, the Japanese government announced that they will be launching a children's agency starting on April 1st, so that's just like next week. And what this agency is supposed to do is supposed to be sort of a national level governing office that takes care of the needs of both children and in particular mothers, recognizing the fact that Japan's birth rate is extremely low and the population is already on a declining trend. And this, I think, really drives a lot of entrepreneurship and innovation in Japan in a way that doesn't necessarily in other parts of the world, where the urgency is not as great to address these needs of demographic change. And so that's some of the things that I particularly am interested in, as well as food and agriculture, which I'll be talking about later on. So thanks.
Hello everybody, my name is Annia, Aleman, Innovation Director at Ascender. Thank you so much for having me here, both the World Affairs Council and Chatham and everybody just for being here. I am a proud Chatham alum, so a few years ago now, I was here as a student and now I'm excited to be back on campus. I'm Nicaraguan American. I was born and raised in Nicaragua, moved to the US when I was 16, and I have been living here for close to 17 years. I've been living, when I moved to the US, I moved directly to Pittsburgh. So I've seen many changes that the city has gone through for the many years that I've been living here now. And I've been, since I was in school, since I was a kid, I've been around entrepreneurs, both at home in Nicaragua, and here through many of my immigrant friends and just like all of the food and beverages businesses and things like that. So I've been around entrepreneurs, I see their resilience and determination and decided that I wanted to continue supporting, to continue figuring out ways to impact their work. So now I used to be at the city of Pittsburgh a few years ago, running innovation projects there through Pre-DH Lab. It's a program where the city connects with startup companies and they test new technologies. And now I work at Ascender, a local incubator, and here we work with entrepreneurs from all stages, people who have ideas and want to turn them into businesses, people who are already generating revenue and want to scale and globalize their companies. And we also have an innovation hub located maybe only 10 minutes away from here, where we get to both work really hard on helping the businesses, figuring out how do we connect them to resources, how do we open doors for them, how do we get them to access to both capital but also like social capital, and then just like figure out a way to help them in wraparound services to generalize it in a way. But there are, in regards to trends that we see in the US, so we see over the years a larger contribution of women really entering the entrepreneurship ecosystems, both with I think businesses that have employers are like 20% of all of the businesses in the US, and then the ones without employers are now 40% of all of the businesses. So we see those trends, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see more representation of women in the entrepreneur ecosystems, not just here locally, but also nationally. There are many challenges still, in regards to that. I think not everything is sort of like a straight line. There are still some dips, ups and downs, I would say, over the years. In regards to access to capital, there's still a big challenge, that women and all entrepreneurs face, both for traditional lending and sources of funds, but also in the VC world. At Ascender, we work with both tech and also small businesses, so I get to see a little bit of both of the two spaces. Just last year, I was looking at some of the reports earlier today, and only 2% of the VC money went to women, to all women teams. And that's a big gap, and so I'm really looking forward to the discussion today, to also sharing some tips, but most importantly to collectively figure out a way to change some of these things. But it's not all bad news. There are also really good strides that have been made, so I'll be happy to share more later.
Excellent, thank you. Jessy.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessy LeClair. I'm the director of the Japan desk at the Cambridge Innovation Center, which we call CIC, and I'm visiting from Cambridge, Massachusetts. My job at CIC is to help build bridges between the innovation ecosystem of Cambridge and the greater Boston area and Japan. We run a number of different activities at CIC. CIC itself is a co-working business, so we offer co-working and shared office space, as well as shared lab space around the US. We have locations also internationally as well. We expanded into Japan a couple of years ago. We have a location in Tokyo, and we're opening a location in Fukuoka, down in Kyushu. So my role is really kind of being the bridge between entrepreneurs and innovators between the two countries. We run events to help bring together the community around different innovation topics that are relevant on sort of both sides of the world. We also work with large Japanese corporations that are setting up small innovation teams in Massachusetts and sourcing new technologies and new startups that are coming out of MIT and sort of in the Boston area more broadly. And then the kind of largest chunk of what I do is actually work with Japanese startups that are trying to expand overseas. So we offer them support, like introducing them to mentors and different experts that have skills that could support their overseas expansion. And we also run programs. So in full disclosure, actually Asako was one of the participants in one of our earlier programs. So I think a lot of the trends that I see are really coming out of the Japanese government. The Japanese government is one of the largest funders of the programs that we run to support Japanese startups. And there has been a real kind of tidal shift happening in Japan right now with a new focus on supporting entrepreneurships and really growing the local innovation ecosystem within Japan. And so it's really exciting to see the way that not only the central government in Japan is putting effort towards this, but also it's trickling down to the smaller regional governments as well. So we have been now starting to run really localized programs like with Yokohama City, with the Osaka Business Development Agency to support startups from smaller hubs that are outside of Tokyo. So I'm excited to see the way that not only Tokyo flourishes in the future, but also these smaller regional hubs can start to grow and expand in Japan.
Terrific. If we can stay with you, Jessy, actually, obviously one of the themes today we're talking about women. We're talking about identity as well. We're talking about culture. And so let's get grounded on the importance of identity. You wrote in a 2016 Medium article that you never really thought much about being mixed race or being Japanese as part of your identity, but these topics come up all the time now. How does your identity play a role in how you connect with communities in your position as the director of the Japan desk?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I actually had to look back for the context of this article. I think you're referencing a piece that I wrote about the reasons not to learn Japanese, which, don't get me wrong, I am very happy that I started learning Japanese in college, and it has been this lifelong process since then. I could keep you here telling you all the ways that learning Japanese has literally changed my life and the course of my career. But as a thought exercise, I once tried to sit down and write what are legitimate reasons why someone might choose not to learn Japanese. And one of the reasons was around being mixed race myself. So as a little bit of background, I grew up in the Boston suburbs. My mom is a 5th generation Japanese American. My great-great-grandparents immigrated to the US, and then they married within the Japanese American community down to my mom. My dad is Caucasian. However, my paternal grandfather was stationed in Japan. He was working as a meteorologist for the Air Force. So actually my very Caucasian uncles were born in Japan, whereas the Japanese American side of my family had never visited Japan. Very confusing. My mom doesn't speak any Japanese, my grandparents didn't speak any Japanese, my great-grandparents kind of barely spoke Japanese. So I grew up with this kind of mixed background on both sides of my family, and I didn't really think about being mixed race myself. I think I was really fortunate in that I didn't face any kind of bullying when I was growing up as a kid. I spent part of my time growing up on this small island in the Marshall Islands called Kwajalein, and there were a lot of mixed race kids around me there, and so it felt very natural. But I have now found myself in this position, like I've kind of made this career for myself where I'm constantly navigating this US, Japan, and my cultural backgrounds and getting so many different questions. And so this thing that I never really thought about is now so salient for everybody around me, and everyone's always asking me about it. If I go to Japan, they're like, oh, maybe you're going to see your grandparents. And I'm like, no, my grandparents live in Nebraska. And oh, you must speak Japanese because, your mom speaks Japanese too. And I'm like, my mom doesn't speak any Japanese. She never visited Japan until I was living in Japan as a study abroad student, and she came to visit me, right? So I think that at the time that I was writing that article, I actually was kind of struggling with these questions and finding it a bit challenging to answer them, and it was causing me to really question myself internally as well. But in my current role, I've actually found that this has a kind of secret power, which is that everyone is kind of curious about me because they can't quite place me. I'm a little bit slippery, and they can't quite put me into any box. And a really key part of my job is networking and connecting people. I'm usually not the last person that the startup needs to talk to. When they come to me, they really need to talk to somebody else, right? They need to talk to an investor, or they need to talk to a pharmaceutical expert, or they need to talk to a regulatory person. So I'm just the conduit. Like, I hopefully know the person that they need to talk to. And so a huge part of my job is building this big network and getting people sort of invested in the work that we're doing and being available as resources when people come to me. So getting people curious about me has actually really helped me drive and build.
It's a great icebreaker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just like, it disarms everybody. It opens it up to really authentic, genuine communication and conversation. And I've been able to build really great relationships that way.
Excellent. So we're going to pull out a few different pieces of your backgrounds and areas of expertise, and again be turning to the audience soon. So we're going to jump now to Kay, and I'd like to turn to your research on the politics of agriculture and Japanese, Chinese, American politics. So entrepreneurship within the food economy continues to grow, and your research indicates that growing trends in the US point toward the farm-to-table movement as a sustainable future. According to the Journal of Academy and Nutrition Dietetics, sociologically, some individuals suggest that the simple idea of local foods and sustainable farming practices helps to bridge demographics otherwise isolated from one another. Just the idea of these things being out there. Can you say more on what innovations and disruptions on the food economy and its implications for women and society or as entrepreneurs?
Okay, that's like a really big question. I could talk like forever on it.
Mouthful.
But let me grab a couple of things. So there are some key drivers of innovation and entrepreneurship in the food area, generally speaking, and certainly sustainability is one of them. We are so concerned now about climate change, as you know, today's an unseasonably kind of warm and weather here in Pittsburgh, and we've had a warm winter, driving all of us to really be concerned about everything from carbon footprint to energy sources and caloric needs. We've also had a lot of news recently about just, you know, access to food in the Pittsburgh area and how many of the pandemic era programs are just ending, increasing rapidly the number of people who don't have access to food. So sustainability in every sense of the word, not just climate change and sort of the scientific side of sustainability, but sustaining economies, sustaining societies, is a major driver of innovation and entrepreneurship, especially driven by women, not only in the United States, but also in Japan. And for Japan in particular, that combines with what I mentioned earlier, this demographic shift, which is very prominent. If you visit Japan today, it's very noticeable that the society is aging rapidly. There's a large portion of the population who are well over the age of 65, and also well over the age of 85 even, working well into their 80s. With very few children, especially if you get out of the large cities. If you get out of Tokyo or Osaka and you go to the rural areas, I was just talking to Asako-san earlier about living in Nagano Prefecture, which is north of Tokyo, where there are just not that many children, and the fewer children there are, the less caloric needs. So more elderly, fewer children means that Japan as a whole needs fewer calories to sort of sustain itself. And these things derive entrepreneurship innovation in a way that, you know, Japanese farmers have to find different outlets for their products, different ways of getting food to the table, and more creative ways to get caloric demand, not just within Japan's borders, but perhaps to its neighbor, to China, where there's a much larger population, to the United States, where there is a growing demand for Japanese-oriented food. And so these drivers of change are not just about sustainability largely, but also combined with demographics. Also, certainly the pandemic has changed the way food is distributed. We all know that schools, both in the United States and Japan, when they closed during the early months of the pandemic, had huge repercussions for children who don't have access to regular hot meals. Certainly was true in Japan as it was in the United States. And as the pandemic sort of wanes into the background, even though it still exists, these concerns become no longer sort of government level concerns and have to trickle down to the private sector or to local governments. And so here's also an area where I see a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship happening. And as you just mentioned, Betty, it really does connect demographics together because it just has to happen locally. Hot food can't be delivered across country or taking many months. It's got to come sort of same day service, and it has to happen within a local school district, for example. And so I feel like, I see a lot of these drivers of change surging within the entrepreneurial community, and I'm sure Annia has seen a lot of that too here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Annia, let's actually go to you as someone who's worked closely with innovators and entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, and you've done this both within local government as well as now a nonprofit at Ascender. What are some of the specific ways in the local ecosystem that we can best support female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, definitely. This is a great question, and I think this is a question that we all should be asking ourselves as well. I really believe that local government, the ecosystem overall, corporations and everything, everybody plays a role into how do we support women entrepreneurs, but also at the individual level, we also can play a role into supporting our women entrepreneurs. But I think overall, there are a few things that I did wanted to highlight. When we are working with women entrepreneurs, sometimes when either they come in with an early stage idea, or maybe they're new to town or new to the space, we see, and not just for women too, but also for marginalized communities, we see a little bit of a lack of access to social capital. So the types of connections that you need that can really open the doors for you. And I'm not talking just about opening a door, but actually, just at the individual level, thinking, from where you are in your position, in your organization, at university, your work, just thinking, how can I utilize my connections, maybe my privilege, to make a connection, to maybe become a customer, to, how do we get in touch into some of these events like this one, but also like entrepreneurial events where you can find more entrepreneurs and connect with them, ask them what do they need, how can I help you, and things like that. And I think just breaking barriers, I think I look at your work as well in regards to my job is also to connect. But all of us can play a role into opening doors to others, increasing that social capital, which is really important. And I see a lot of students here, and they also have a similar challenge, right? Like whenever you're entering in the workforce, you may not really know that many people, but it takes one person to make that door open. So I would say, just thinking about social capital, building that social capital, definitely access to, investment is a big thing, so if you work closely, with local banks or sources of funding and things like that, how can we work together to redesign the way that we are providing funding? Over and over we see the statistics that, we see women being underfunded, what's going on, why it's happening. There is a root cause there that's still not being addressed. So how can we maybe think about innovative ways to redesign applications, maybe get ready for funding, or just even making more connections between the people with money and the people that really need it in order to scale. So I would say a couple of those things, and then just really being aware of from where you are, how can you help? Even all of us here can write a Google review about your favorite business, and that really helps their SEO, their marketing, their awareness and visibility. So that really helps too. So there are many ways that we can help, but just contact me afterwards and we can share some more information as well.
There's a lot in there. I love it. Thank you for that. I want to give a shout out to Reiko in the back, artist, entrepreneur. I hope everyone gets to check out the materials that she's selling here, the beautiful work that she's created. Jessy, do you want to weigh in on that, given the work that you've done with entrepreneurs? Is there anything you'd like to add there? Or?
I don't know, I feel like Anya summed it up.
You covered it, yeah. That was pretty comprehensive, but just wanted to bring you in as well. Asako, in 2020, the Japan Business Federation set a goal to have women hold more than 30% of the executive positions at major companies by 2030. Last year in 2022, the Shuntu Spring Labor Management Negotiations called on its member companies to provide more support for female employees in balancing work and family life. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you very much for the tough question to answer, especially if I wanna, answer with, So people may say like, company is not trying enough, but I'm there firsthand, and then I can tell company is trying really hard. But the new system are thought out by male, like old male. So they don't know what the women want. So that's the problem. So money is put into the wrong direction, I think. So my current company is a really young startup which doesn't have really much of any rules yet. So so let me talk about my former company. So there, that company was probably better than the others. So I was in a committee called Hataraku Nadeshiko Iinkai. So Nadeshiko is good Japanese woman. So it's like a working good Japanese woman committee. So there, we are trying to figure out how to motivate women to get to the executive position, how to solve this problem. We tried to attack this problem. And then, the company had a daycare system on site, so, we can actually just put the kids there, drop the kids there, and then just go to feed the kids during the work and stuff. So it was very, very good company for that purpose. But then, I realized that, I gave a birth in the States, but then, from my eyes, the Japanese maternity leave system is very generous. And then, then I wonder if that's actually a good thing or bad thing for women's career. Because, when you get pregnant and then when you are expecting, you can actually take a maternity leave 6 weeks prior to your due date, and then you can take 8 weeks after your delivery. And then you can take another maternity leave called child care leave up until your kid's first birthday. And if there is any particular reason, like you can't find any child care, then you can actually extend that child care leave up until second birthday of your kid. So that's a long period of leave, right? And then during that leave, you get to pay the 68% of your salary. So it's pretty generous, I think. But then, when women get back to work though, you have such a, time off mode. It's not just skills, but your mentality becomes it's so dissociated from work, right? So it's really hard to get back on work. And then, many cases when they come back to work, they are pregnant with a second kid. So after 3 months or 4 months, they go back on the, second leave again. Then for 5 years or 6 years, you don't really quite, involved in the work. So then, from the company side perspective, it's, it's bad to say, but you can't trust those women workforce. That's kind of fair to say, I would say. So, from the company end, they try to avoid to hire young female because of that reason, which is, come down to discrimination against women. But then, I think, what needs to be done is there needs to be better child care system so that, women can go back to work quicker and then with more motivation. Because right now, it's when there is such a support system, people just, advise your, young colleagues, oh, take advantage of the system. You don't have to work. You can be with kids and you can get paid. So, it's fine. But then, after, so many months, you lose, appetite to work. So I think that's a problem in Japan that, we can't actually get the women's career established.
Yeah, that's such a challenge, and I appreciate you walking us through that because I think we're talking about women's opportunity, right? Opportunity, entrepreneurship, innovation, but it's not just on women. It takes the whole society.
Right.
And that's a huge challenge. Now I have one more question for the panel, and then my colleague Kara is gonna come around with a mic. If you could, we're gonna just go down the line with this last one, but what advice do you have? There's one thing that you would like female innovators or entrepreneurs to know, what might you give to the next generation? Jessy, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. So I was thinking about this question, and I'd actually like to speak to the men in the room because I've had some really amazing men throughout my career who have lifted me up and put me to the front and shown the spotlight on me. And as much as I have really appreciated all of my women mentors and guides, I have been given certain opportunities by the powerful men in my life that I might not have been able to be given otherwise. So I think that this is really a conversation on both sides, and would encourage everybody to think about, from their position, what they can do to support the people around them.
Yes, definitely. I would just say that, I think when you may be the only one in a room full of people and, sometimes it may feel lonely, that I feel like things do get better, that there are people out there who want to help, you just haven't made that connection. So I would really encourage people that, we all have our fears, we all, it's very difficult to also be in front of a group of people and everything, but just one step at a time, you can connect with that one person, you can ask questions about, specific industry, what do you see that, I want to start a business, I don't know what are the trends that are happening. So look for the helpers. I think there are people always out there that, 90% of the time they will want to help, they will want to connect you, but also be specific about your ask, right? This is my challenge, this is where I want to get. Who do you know that might get me there? So the more specific you get, and you don't have to get it right the first time, you can try again. But the more specific you are, the more ideas it sparks to the other person that maybe wants to help you. So just not being afraid, to contact someone on LinkedIn or, at a networking event like this one, just take the first leap.
I love the integration of Fred Rogers, look for the helpers in an entrepreneurship conversation.
I am from Pittsburgh.
You gotta do it, yeah, I love it. Okay.
As someone who has a 4-month-old at home, I definitely want to echo some of the things I've heard here, but in particular about leaning on others, especially not just family, but community, especially as it comes to childcare. So it's not just Japan that has this big problem with childcare. Here in Pittsburgh, it's impossible to find childcare for a child under the age of 1, especially after the pandemic when the number of caregivers has decreased considerably. And the only way that I've managed to just sort of stay working 100% is to lean on the community, the family, and also my neighbors who pick up my kids from the bus stop, etc. And just not to hesitate to ask, which is something perhaps that for especially career-oriented women, it's hard to do and say, I can't do this, or I don't have the time, or I just don't have the help. And I've learned with this third late career child that I have at home that, I'm just gonna ask, what do I have to lose? And so that's helped a lot. And I actually am going to Japan in a couple of weeks. And I know that I'm gonna hit the same kind of problems in Japan, and I will just lean on my neighbors and family and friends. So I think that's my biggest advice.
Thank you.
Okay, so from me, so everyone said what I wanted to say, so I'll talk about something else. So in Japan, well, it's in the States too, but now in Japan, because of the goal for 30% of executive role by 2030, so there are lots of positions in Japan who's actually looking for women. And then, earlier in my career, I thought those positions I really don't want to apply because they just, values being a female, but then not my talent or, my capability. And then, that kind of insulting, that's what I thought. But now, I think, just take advantage of it. You're gonna have to, take a chance, and then you can prove yourself that you can actually do it with your, own talent. So, don't hesitate to take the chance, whatever in front of you.
Excellent. If you can all join me in thanking our panel. Thank you so much for this insight. And now we want to hear from you. What questions do you have? Yes.
Hi, I'm Rachel Copper. I'm the former national president of a US-based organization called Women in Bio that was focused on lifting and accelerating women in the life sciences. And I actually would like to build on what you were just talking about, reflecting, I see a lot of young faces in here, reflecting on earlier in your career and comparing that to now. How have your priorities shifted as a woman entrepreneur, as a woman in life sciences?
Yeah, my priority shifting, yeah. Well, I guess like in earlier my career, like I was really focusing on establishing my career. I want to get to like the highest position that whatever that I can get. I was working really hard and really hard. But then now, like I'm more relaxed. Like earlier time, I wasn't sure about my own like talent or ability, but now like I have a confidence in myself. So I don't have to be that much strong going at it. I know I can do it. So I'm no more relaxed now, and I think you need that.
Thank you. Other questions in the back?
Thank you. I was wondering if there is a female entrepreneur here in Pittsburgh that you're excited about, either someone who's just starting or has a successful company, and if so, could you describe their business and or their journey?
Wow, that's a hard question because I love so many women-owned businesses here, and actually we're at Chatham, who focuses a lot on establishing women-owned businesses and really propelling them forward. But I will say there are many out there, but from over the past 4 years that I've been at Ascender, I get to work very closely with entrepreneurs every day, and some of them, to give two examples, we have a skincare company called Natural Beauty. It's Pittsburgh-owned, Black-owned businesses. Lashisha is the CEO. She was trying to figure out ways to expose her kids to natural products. She was afraid of all of the things that you read behind in the labels in the products, and you just don't know what they are, what they bring, and what could cause, how they can affect your kids. So she decided to take it upon herself to figure out natural, organic, effective skincare products that she could create, produce, and introduce to her family. So she started, doing that and doing a lot of research on it. She began her line. Then, I think her community started, her family started backing her up, and then every time she would meet a new customer, they would be like, "This is the best cream. This is the best rose water for your face." Mm-hmm. So she started her business like that. So she came to our incubator last year wanting to figure out a way to scale and pivot, and we're helping her with that. And we want to make sure that that her brand becomes one of the brands that a go-to brand for organic products that you know where they're coming from, that are effective, that are safe for your kids, and also for everybody in general. I actually wear the products every day, so I highly recommend it. Yes, and then another example is a tech company, Clubify. Clubify is also a Latina-owned company from Pittsburgh. Daniela CEO is the CEO. And she saw a lot of need, and especially after a pandemic, in the supply chain area. So her whole focus is on sustainability. How can we optimize our sustainability practices in procurement? She's an expert in that space, knows about supply chain, and she took it upon herself to figure out, hey, how can we help big companies figure out what their supply chain looks like in regards to like sustainability, clean technology? How are they meeting their clean tech goals? So she's one of our founders, also came in a year prior to Lashisha. We worked with her. She had an idea, a research idea, and now she has a working product, and just recently announced a $1.8 million seed round that she gained from a lot of actually local investors, the lead investor, Black Tech Nation, a local VC fund led by a woman, Kalani Cook. So those are my go-to sort of like what's coming to mind, but we definitely have a lot of success stories that are great, representation of what we can do.
I love these intersections too of culture, identity, environmental impact. Yeah, it's beautiful. Any others that come to mind for anyone else on the panel? Other questions? Yeah, I see a couple up front. There we go.
Hi, my name is Megumi. I am a student from North Allegheny Intermediate High School. Well, we just finished our agriculture unit in human geography. Well, actually, we had our test today. It's really hard. But we just learned that, especially in agriculture, there's a very low population of women in the work field, really globally, but a lot in already developed countries because there are less needs for the labor force. There's more machines. What do you think is important for women to join these more industries that are more male-oriented? Like, what do you think is needed in entrepreneur and innovation?
Great question, Kate.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I want to comment on two things that you said there. Agriculture is a tricky one in the sense that in statistics, you don't see a lot of women in agriculture. In reality, a lot more women work in those fields, they're just never counted. So I want, when you read your textbook or your teacher says something, to really question, are you sure there are no women working on those farms? Because most of the time, it's female labor on the farms that just simply don't get counted on the books. The farm is owned by the family head or they're owned by the male head of family, and the women just don't get counted in those numbers. But I rest assured they're there. That's one. The other is you said there's now more mechanization and technology has come into agriculture. One of the things that I'm working on researching is just really this need to change our notion of agriculture as the primary sector. So I'm sure you learned at school that primary sector is sort of like agriculture, forestry, fisheries, sort of producing from the land. Whereas the goal for developing countries is to get out of that primary sector and move on to either the secondary, which is industry, or better yet, tertiary sector, which is services. And this is sort of in my opinion, an outdated way of thinking about the economy. Agriculture is no longer just the primary sector. It's high tech, it's biosciences, it's genomics, it's hydroponics. The farmer of the future is a scientist, not a career that we want to get out of, either here in Pittsburgh or anywhere else in the world. And so it's not something that, I think 2 or 3 generations ago, almost all farmers would tell you that they don't want their children, their sons and daughters, to be the next generation farmer. And that certainly has changed considerably in the 21st century. But that also means that the next generation farmers need a tremendous amount of education, right? It can't just be on the job. It needs a university degree, possibly a higher degree than that, a graduate degree, time in the laboratory, learning how to operate GPS systems, artificial intelligence, and especially a country like Japan that's declining in population where there's just not enough people. A lot of it has to be mechanized, roboticized, automated. And so, again, I encourage you to think of agriculture as a science field almost, a mechanics field, one in which, just like any other science field, women can and need to excel in and participate in.
Terrific. I saw a question here and then one in the back.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Edie Cook. One of my daughters came here to Chatham, and shortly after she graduated I started work at Carlo, and I spent my first few weeks worrying that I would say Chatham versus Carlo while I was there. I also, when I was younger, I did some research in early childhood development in Japan, a little place called Yamashina outside of Kyoto. And I had a comment and a question regarding maternity leave and also in general about cross-cultural differences, particularly for women and men. So my comment is, regarding the maternity leave, I know there's some models, especially in the Scandinavian countries, where, for example, the mother would get 6 months of leave, and you could have another 3 months, but it would have to be the father. And in my mind, that's one way that we can stop having the view of the woman only have a disruption in order to care for children when we spread the care for children among the father and the mother. So I just thought I'd make that comment. I don't see the United States or Japan getting anywhere close to anything like that, but I just thought that that's a model to think about when we think about trying to make it so the workplace is caring for a family as well as moving forward and advancing career. My question is, I have a husband who's an entrepreneur, he's an inventor, and I've often thought that a woman's role often in society is to nurture and take care of family and community. And while you do that, I feel that the tolerance for risk is not as high for women oftentimes than men. And a lot of things that my husband will do to invest and grow, I have a problem with because it's risky. And I was just wondering what you think, because you work with women who go into that area. Do you find that there's some kind of hesitation that women sometimes have because they have to take a leap and invest and maybe take on debt? I'm very debt averse, and I think part of it is because I'm female. So I was just wondering if you've noticed that, or if that's something you've helped people overcome.
Thank you, Edie. Who would like to take that?
I can, yeah, sure. Yes, definitely risk aversion is something that we see a lot, right? And when I spoke earlier about stats in traditional banking, also still having challenges to lend to women, there's also another side of the story where women tend to also ask for less loans sometimes. Hopefully that will change. But I think it comes really from that risk aversion. But when I work with entrepreneurs, I think about sort of like all of us, we cannot be generalized into a bucket, right? I mean, I think we have different types of risks, but where is the risk coming from? Where is the fear coming from? Is it maybe because maybe you just don't know how to do projections for finance, or maybe you don't understand really, like the application is like 10 pages long, but you don't understand that maybe what it really means, what it really takes, what low interest rates versus high interest rates. So I think when we work with entrepreneurs, we really try to work on a one-on-one basis, customized to their needs, problems, and also understand their fear. Where are they coming from, right? Some people come from some money, some people not, and maybe it is about just thinking about, is it really the risk aversion? Is it really because it's just really hard to not have financial stability, which is a really big fear that we all have, and some more than others. And so I think those are some mitigation tactics that can happen. Working very closely on a one-on-one basis with a coach that can understand both where the emotional side of things and then the technical side of things can help someone overcome that fear. So that would be one tip, yeah.
I feel like I should add something here, since I mostly work with Japanese startups, and Japan is sort of known as a risk-averse culture. So it's like layers of risk aversion with the people that I work with. So I'm actually very curious to hear what Asako thinks on this topic. But I would agree with a lot of what Annia said. I think that we spend a lot of time working not only specifically with the women founders that we work with from Japan, but just our Japanese founders in general, to talk with them through their concerns about taking certain risks. We hear from a lot of the Japanese startups that they'll be, willing to come to the US once they close the deal, right? Like once they get an investor to give them money, once they find the partner that's willing to buy their technology. And it's working with them to understand that it's going to require them to step a little bit outside of their comfort zone in order to make that deal happen, that you can't make that deal entirely in what feels safe, right? And so kind of like coaching them and working with them and understanding where they're coming from. And also, I think a big part of it is bringing them to the United States. So a lot of our programs have a component where we actually bring them to Boston. They're based out of CIC for a couple of weeks, and we can actually like introduce them face to face with potential partners, potential investors, and have them sort of feel the environment and really like experience it firsthand. And I think that also helps relieve a lot of their concerns. It feels very kind of foreign and distant when they're in Japan and they're not interacting with the people face to face in real life. And so I think that giving them that experience, even for a short period, helps them to see the potential and maybe then take the step and take a little bit of risk and commitment from their side in order to make some progress on their US expansion.
Okay, then I have a little bit different opinion on that. So, like Annia said, like you can't think about it in one bucket, and that's really true. And then in general, like, women may, don't want to take a risk. But then, females in entrepreneur, like they take chances, they take risks more than males do. Well, especially in Japan. Unfortunately, when I was in Jessy's program, I was the only female. Rest of them are all male, and they are very, conservative people. But the female in entrepreneurship, they are the ones who takes risks and the chances, and they keep going forward. So, it's totally different kind of mindset. So I think it depends on their background or their goals that they set, and they are like completely two different, kind of mindset, I think.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we have that perspective too of the entrepreneur, because they really are the ones that can say it. I mean, and when we say like about risk aversion, we're saying that they're just a little bit more. There are many things that we consider, but people are out there. They are taking risk. Having a company go through a global pandemic where everything shut down, that was so scary to see from all of entrepreneurs in my work at a center. So, they are taking risks. Don't take this the other way. But I think maybe sometimes women weigh more options, right? So it is really up to us as service providers and organizations to figure out how do we best help them in a way that works for each individual.
Excellent. We have time for one more question in the back.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. There's two in the back.
This might be directed to Jessy or an open question. You touched on social capital. Is there more than one avenue, or is it just one source?
I talked a bit. It's mostly about network expansion. So, if you are starting out, and maybe like you're moving into a new space, you may not really have like champions or connectors that can introduce you to the right mentor or that know your product or solution enough that maybe they can make different types of strategic connections. So when I talk about social capital, I talk about network expansion. What are some different organizations that can, help you gain that network fast so that you can just start meeting people, connecting to more customers, to the right mentors. And because a lot of, when you don't have that many connections, a lot of the time sometimes can be wasted on just, maybe meeting with the people that are not going to be, there for you, but maybe they can know someone that will introduce you to someone else. So I think that's what I meant. I don't know if you want to touch base on that.
Yeah, I think that that's what a lot of what we're trying to do for the Japanese startups, because when they come over, they may have zero existing network in the US, and so we can kind of jumpstart their process of meeting people and hopefully introduce them to people faster than they would be able to have gotten to that person themselves.
Excellent. And on the back on this side of the room, you'll close this out over here.
Thank you. Exchange student, I have a question related to innovation and entrepreneurship. One of the main drivers of innovation is the participation of people in STEAM degrees, science, technology, engineering, and math. Unfortunately, in many countries in the world, there is an uneven distribution of people studying these careers. And that's the reason why in a lot of countries, most of startups are led by men. This relationship, how is showing in Japan? Have you seen a growing proportion of women participating in these degrees?
Yeah, in the Japanese situation, I think there are a lot more women involved in entrepreneurship, than before. I mean, before there was really nothing. And then now younger generation is really different, especially in Japan though. Like now communication skills is really important, especially for startups and entrepreneur. So in Japan, like female have better communication skills than men. I don't know if I should say that one. Yeah, so there are a lot more women coming in the younger generation. It's just we don't have a very good role model. Like my generation or upper generation, there is almost no female like who can be a role model like in the entrepreneurship. So that's why like we don't have a very good society or community for like working women who can be a role model or mentor system. I'm hoping, or I want to actually help younger generation. I don't know if I can be a good role model or not, but still I want to help a younger generation to motivate them to actually get to what they want to do.
I think you could be a terrific role model, Asako. I think you already are. Thank you, Asako. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Annia and Jessy. And thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you to our partners, Chatham, the International Studies Department, International Affairs Department, and the Center for Women's Entrepreneurship. There's information here from the center. If you want to get connected, please do. Please check out Reiko and her excellent, beautiful craft. I already saw some earrings I'm going to get, but there's many other things there as well. And thank you again for being here tonight. Please stick around, have more food, and connect with one another. Thank you all.